Hello, AP students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Chapter 10, Personality, Part 6, Patterns in Personality, and we're going to focus on the persistent patterns. And the Greek physician Hippocrates was really one of the first to classify people into 4 temperaments, and this is based on a balance of the different humors, and the humors were the bodily fluids such as blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile that control personality. So when we talk about like the sanguine personality, this is someone who's very cheerful, friendly, characterized by strong warm blood. The choleric is marked by anger coming from yellow bile, believed to flow from the liver. Melancholic, depressed, produced by black bile in the liver. And then finally, the phlegmatic, cool, aloof, slow, unemotional. This is because of the body's dominant fluid and phlegm or mucus. And you can break it down. Your extroverted personalities would be your choleric, your fiery, and your sanguine, your friendly. Introverted, more the melancholic and the phlegmatic. Their goals and relationships, you can see that there. So personality and temperament. Temperament is the basic pervasive personality dispositions that are apparent early in life. The dominant characteristics such as shyness and moodiness could characterize a person's personality. Biological psychologists now suspect that some individual differences in dispositions arise from a balance of chemicals in the brain and have a genetic bias. So like newborns can basically be inhibited, meaning a little shy, or uninhibited, being very bold. And the Myers-Briggs type indicator is an example of kind of breaking down these different temperaments, and we'll talk more about that. So traits are the moody, being moody, cheerful, melancholy, enthusiastic, so forth. And these traits are the stable personality characteristics that are presumed to exist within an individual and guide their thoughts and actions. So the big 5, this would be the 5 dominant personality factors. Sometimes there's a couple different acronyms that you could remember the big 5. We're going to use the acronym OCEAN for this, but you could use the acronym CANOE if you like. But for OCEAN, we're talking about openness to experience, meaning that inquiring intellect, curiosity, independence, opposite of closed-mindedness. Conscientiousness, this is your dependability, your cautiousness, your perseverance, your super ego strength, prudence, constraint. Opposite would be like impulsiveness, carelessness, irresponsibility. Extroversion, your social adaptability, assertiveness, sociability, boldness, or self-confidence. Opposite would be introversion. Agreeableness is your conformity, your likability, your friendliness, your compliance, warmth. Opposite would be coldness and negativity. And then finally, the N, neuroticism, anxiety or emotionality. And the opposite end would be emotional stability, emotional control. The 5-factor theory, this is a trait perspective suggesting that personality is composed of 5 fundamental personality dimensions. And that's like we just mentioned before. And here they are again. So Raymond Cattell and his 16 personality factors. Cattell obviously used statistics to identify 16 personality factors that are believed to constitute the building blocks of individual personality. And it was the degree to which each person possessed these factors that formed their complete personality. Some of the things that Cattell devised actually are used by a lot of dating websites today. So if you happen to use one of those in the future and you are paired up with, certain people, it is probably based on some of these different factors. Assessing traits, the Big 5 inventory. This device has been used to study personality stability during the lifetime and the relationships of personality characteristics, the physical health, and various life events. The MMPI-2, this is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, revised, 2nd edition. This is widely used as a personality assessment instrument that gives scores based on basically 10 important clinical traits of mental illness, which we'll take a look at here in a second. But it consists of 567 statements. These are true and false statements, by the way. And they deal with attitudes, habits, fears, preferences, physical health, beliefs, and general outlook. Attempting to fake a good or bad score for the MMPI is not really smart, because the test has 4 lie scales that will most likely signal that something is amiss. This is a test that is actually very standardized as far as the nature of it. Sometimes it's used to figure out if the person is competent to stand trial. So if you've ever heard of somebody being declared insane, from a legal point of view, the MMPI might have been a tool used to determine that. Individuals who are interested in going into the field of counseling, sometimes they take the MMPI to see whether or not they have the right qualities to go into that field. But the MMPI is very reliable. It's very consistent as far as the scoring. It's also valid, so it has a certain level of validity. So it actually measures what it was designed to measure. Below here are 6 different statements that if you would be taking the MMPI, you would have to answer. And if you would answer any of these inconsistently, certainly that would be a red flag. Okay, I mentioned before that there's the clinical scale. There are 10 things that we're looking for here. So if the person has hypochondria, depression, hysteria, a sociopathic, deviant, issues with their gender, when we talk about masculinity and femininity, paranoia, and so forth. And if somebody would happen to test high in maybe an area that might show that they're having a mental illness, that obviously might be very helpful to determine whether or not they might be competent to stand trial, or if they have competency for a certain job. Anyway, evaluating the temperament and trait theories. These theories give us a snapshot of personality and a picture that portrays personality as fixed or static, meaning that it's rather than dynamic and changing. So oversimplifying our complex natures by describing personality just on a few dimensions can be an issue. There are some problems with the self-fulfilling prophecies, like labeling someone and having someone kind of fulfill that label. The positive side is that the trait theory gives us some ability to predict behavior in common situations, such as a work setting. A lot of personality tests like these are used to help select and screen employees. Trait and person situation debate. Cognitive theorist Walter Mischel, who you see pictured below here, dropped the scientific bombshell on the trait theorist with evidence suggesting that we behave far less consistently from one situation to another than most people had assumed. A person who is extroverted in one situation can become shy and retiring in another. And Mischel argued that knowledge of the situation is more important than predicting the behavior than knowing the person's traits. Along with that, the person situation controversy. This is the theoretical dispute concerning the relative contribution of personality factors and situation factors in controlling behavior. This is Mischel's theory, and critics attack Mischel, pointing out that his methods underestimate the thread of consistency across situations. Critics have pointed out that some people behave more consistently than others. It's true that personality traits, as measured by personality tests, typically account for less than 10% of all the other factors that affect behavior. In our lives, when we talk about a type, this refers to important dimensions or clusters of traits that are not only central to a person's personality, but they're found essentially the same pattern in a lot of other people. And Carl Jung, his typology scheme, especially when you talk about the notions of introversion and extroversion, enjoyed a lot of success. So the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, this is a widely used personality test based on Jungian types. Nearly 2 million people take this every year, and it's used by many colleges for their counseling centers to help students pick the right careers. And anyway, the TI is commonly used by consultants at management training sessions to convey a message that people have distinct personality patterns that suit them for different kinds of jobs. And on this kind of inventory, examinees answer a series of questions about how they make judgments, perceive the world, relate to others, and based on these responses, a scoring system assigns an individual 4 dimensions. They could be introversion, extroversion, thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition, judgment, and perception. So when you look at this inventory, these different indicators have different types, and you might be rated by that. So criticisms of this, the reliability is kind of questionable. Fewer than half of those that are tested get the same exact results 5 weeks later. Validity of the test, we have managers, counselors, entertainers, sellers who work with people who score higher on the extroversion level. By comparison, those who tend to score on the introverted level might be your librarians, computer scientists, physicians. The lack of evidence documenting relationships between the personality type and occupational success is kind of lacking. This inventory needs more validity. Others say that the value of this is its abilities to suggest new avenues for exploration. The instrument may have some value in counseling, especially when counselors resist the temptations to interpret the results rigidly. And if you would break it down, this is what the Myers-Briggs inventory looks like. Okay. And if you wanted to look into certain personality types, this is kind of how it gets broken down. All right. Thank you very much.